What up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Matt White. I'm at the end of the line for the road to Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm very close. So now I'm going to be reviewing the next X-Men cinematic universe of the another standalone film, and it's Logan. I cannot believe that this movie came out so many years ago, and this is directed by James Mangold. We got the returning director that made the Wolverine film, which he had directed 310 to Yuma and Copland, which I still haven't yet to see. But then he later goes on and directed Ford v Ferrari that got an Academy Award after Logan. And then he directed Dial of Destiny for the Indiana Jones movie, which I will not get into. But James Mangold was such a great, talented director. The way his pitch was to give us a swan song of Logan, who was at the end of his ropes. He's at the end of his career, and he's now got more older, more darker, and more depressing. And it looked like he was at the end of the line. This was building up to the swan song of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and they made it clear from the marketing standpoint when this movie came out that this was going to be the last time we were going to see him, and then after the end of the film, he was going to hang up the claws and move on from his career, and they were building up to it. This is a character that now he's at the end of his ropes. As I said before, he's not healing as fast as he used to. His immortality is now like disappearing, and the adamantium is making him sick. He's slowly dying. And this tone to me felt very grounded, more realistic, and this is taking place in a dystopian future in 2029 that the mutants have practically been extinct, and there's only a few of them left. And there hadn't been any newborn for the last 20 to 25 years, and Logan is taking care of Charles Xavier, which now he's at a stage where he's not the man he used to be. He suffered through a brain disease of Alzheimer's, dementia, and he has the seizure that made him lose control of his powers, and it made everybody freeze every time he freaks out and has a seizure. And if it gone on long enough, it would have killed him. And Logan is really becoming a limo driver, and he wanted to save up enough money to be able to get a boat, a Sunseeker, and they can and him and Charles can live up in the ocean and die off into the sunset. And that's always been his goal from the start, until he was approached by the nurse who has the little girl named Laura, played by Dafne Keen, and she's an important person, and that his last job is to smuggle her to North Dakota and get it across the border of the Canadian border. And that's been the job until the facility company made by Transgen Alkaline, and it's led by the manhunt by Boyd Holbrook, the one who's hunting Logan down and actually capturing Laura, who's an escapee from the lab, because apparently she's not just an important person, but she's also a mutant like Logan. She has a similar ability like Logan, and she's literally the daughter of Logan. Because what you saw, how it was explained throughout the whole movie, he later discovers that she became one of the people that experimented on the newborn of mutants. Apparently, Richard E. Grant, who is the main villain, the one who was orchestrating this whole thing, he's the reason why these newborns are happening, and he's responsible for wiping out these OG mutants, and nearly wiped out Logan's own kind. And his goal is to create mutants of his own by taking the DNA of the male DNA who are carrying the mutant gene and implanting on these Mexican women and impregnating them, and turning them into a living weapon. And that's always been his goal. And Richard E. Grant was great in the movie, even though he was kind of a one note character. I didn't really care for him that much. And I loved Boyd Holbrook, the one who's the trigger man, the one who's going on the manhunt for Laura. I thought that the relationship between Laura and Charles was so good and emotional, even though she doesn't talk as much because she refuses to. And Dafne Keen's performance was incredible, especially at first when I found out that they wanted to get Millie Bobby Brown to play Laura's character, and because she was coming off at the heels of Stranger Things, and they wanted to get a major star to play the role. And it didn't surprise me that she didn't get the role, but I'm glad that it was Dafne Keen, and I thought she was fantastic. And her relationship between her and Logan was great, even though that they kind of have that dysfunctional relationship. And because Wolverine's a cranky and a hard ass, and he drops a lot of F-bombs because this is an R-rated movie. This is the first R-rated Wolverine film that we have ever gotten in the Fox X-Men universe, because it's coming off the success of the first Deadpool movie that became the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time when that film came out. And it got Fox's excuse to want to allow them to make an R-rated Wolverine movie, because Wolverine has always been an R-rated character. He's very bloody and fierce, and he's a guy who always drops F-bombs a lot. He's not a PG-13 character, and I'm glad that they didn't exploit that for the sake of the R-rated tone. It felt right for the tone and it fit so well. It felt like a modern day Western. It did have that kind of hell or high water vibe. And it was a culmination plot of Children of Men and the Last of Us and Unforgiven from the Clint Eastwood movie. This movie is incredible. It's became my top three favorite comic book movies of all time. And this is the Hugh Jackman's best breakout performance since Denis Villeneuve's Prisoner. And he got robbed at the Oscars, and I was so torn that he did not get the nomination and win because he puts on an incredible performance that I never thought that Hugh Jackman was capable of doing, especially Patrick Stewart. This is a different side of his performance that we have not seen before. He played like, oh my God, like him being him performing on screen was so heartbroken to watch. He's a man who has Alzheimer's and has dementia, as I mentioned before, and he keeps constantly getting seizures and he loses control of his powers and becomes a weapons of mass destruction. And they definitely mention what happened in Westchester, but we're not very clear what happened. Apparently, all the X-Men characters got killed, but then later in the film, we see that Charles Xavier remembers what happened in Westchester, and apparently he was responsible for the death of the X-Men and some of the mutants because he lost control when he had the seizure, and it was too late like for Wolverine to save everyone, and it really set him off the edge and it left him broken. He was a man that is ready to be done and he's ready to die because he knows he's going to die because the adamantium is poisoning him and he has the adamantium bullet and he explains it later in the film to Laura that I kept that as a reminder of for what I am and who I am as an animal, as a soldier, as a killer. And he was thinking about offing himself at times. It was such a depressing scene for me. Goddamn, Hugh Jackman is phenomenal in the movie. And seeing the death of Charles was absolutely heartbreaking. This was more heartbreaking than X-Men: The Last Stand, and we see that a transgen Alkaline has created a clone of Wolverine called X-24, their ultimate weapon without a conscience. And the scene when we see Logan and the X-24 see the sheriff screen together, he's staring at himself. He's staring at the part of himself that he would have been if his humanity was stripped away and he was becoming nothing but an animal killing machine without a conscience. And I love that scene. That scene really got me. A lot of people would consider this as a more of a lazy cop out, but I completely strongly disagree. I thought it worked so well. And I've heard that originally they wanted to get Liev Schreiber's Sabretooth back from X-Men Origins and be in the movie instead. But for me, I'm glad that they didn't do that because then it would have added a lot of major plot holes and it wouldn't make any sense for him to be in the movie in the first place. It was too little too late for him to be in there. So for having the clone of Wolverine X-24 made more sense than the other. But it was heartbreaking to see the death of Charles Xavier. And also Stephen Merchant, who plays Caliban, who has the ability to track mutants and has a great scent, and he's an albino character, and he was the one who nurses Charles Xavier, and he's friends with Logan. And I thought Stephen Merchant was absolutely brilliant in the movie. He comes off as more of a comedic actor, but I never thought he'd be capable of making a great dramatic performance, and I thought he was fantastic. I mean, they did had another version of Caliban in the other X-Men film called X-Men Apocalypse, which is another iteration. But a lot of people are asking, is this part of the continuity to the Bryan Singer's X-Men universe? Yes and no. I mean, James Mangold and Hugh Jackman made it was very clear that this was probably considered to be an Elseworld story, that you don't have to require yourself to watch the other Fox's X-Men movies to get this film. But I thought it would have been more rewarding if you did, because throughout the whole years, we've seen him play Wolverine for so many movies, and seeing him coming to conclusion was heartbreaking. And the one scene that I really love when he's in a safe haven with the other newborn mutants with Laura, he shares a scene where he breaks down and gives his monologue that he's trying to push her away for a reason, and he wants her and him to go their separate ways after she got what she wanted, after she was able to reunite with her friends. And the only reason he wants to do it because bad shit happens to people that they care about. Because look what happened to Charles. Look what happened to Caliban. They're 6 feet under the ground.
I never asked for this. All right? Charles never asked for this. Caliban never asked for this. And they are 6 feet under the ground. Because I suck at this. Bad shit happens to people I care about. You understand me?
And Hugh Jackman's performance was my favorite part of the movie. because everywhere he goes, death follows, and he can never have that quiet life. He can never have the life that he wanted or what Charles wanted him to have because he was meant to be alone. And to see in the finale where now that the newborn mutants are about to be captured by the those men that was led by Richard E. Grant, that they're about to capture them in the forest, Hugh Jackman had knew that there was only one thing to do, one thing that was selfless act, where he uses the serum that was supposed to make these newborn mutants stronger, and he's supposed to be taking a small dose and not so much because then it would kill him and his body would not be able to handle it. But he was like, screw it. He had to think fast and he had to use it to inject himself, and he becomes the berserker Wolverine that we wanted. And him going taking out a bunch of fools was a big giant smile on my face. It was so graphic, bloody, the brutality that they did not hold back. And I love Dafne Keen's fight choreography when she took on a bunch of those men. She was fierce and deadly, and she was trained to be a soldier. And I thought her taking out a bunch of men was awesome. And I loved her team up with Wolverine. It was so good. And this was the one thing that he had to do that was very selfless, that was not selfish. And he takes the selfless act by sacrificing himself for to make sure that her and her friends get to safe haven and get across the border. And he knows that once he takes that full dose of that serum, his body will not handle another wound because once he gets stabbed another wound, he dies. And the death scene after his defeat against X-24, when he gets just like gets like slammed into the bunch of spike of wood, and stabs him, this is when he know he was already done. And the performance of the death scene with Logan and him and talking to Laura, I was fucking crying my eyes out the way that they handled that scene. It was heartbreaking. I mean, we all suspected that he was going to bite the dust, but we didn't know how that was going to happen. And he puts on a very believable performance. And he tells Laura, don't be what they made you.
Don't be what they made you. So this is what it feels like.
And the reason why he says that this is what it feels like, because this is the first time he's ever felt loved. And this is the first time he actually gets to be a father to Laura. And she calls him daddy for the first time, because that is her father. And losing a father figure to her after for a week on the road and bonding, it really broke her heart, and it really broke me too. I mean, this was the best breakout performance. It was so depressing and heartbreaking. Oh my God. And by the time that after the time that they buried Logan, after she leaves with her friends, she turns that cross into the X because he sacrificed himself as an X-Man. And it ended with the X-Men universe. And it was a great send-off to the story, great send-off to the characters, great send-off to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And there was no post-credit scene, so they're not setting up anything. They were very clear on that. And the one thing I did not like was the Johnny Cash choice of the song at the end of the credits. I wish they would have had Johnny Cash Hurt, the song. I thought that would have fit a lot better. But overall, this is my top 3 greatest comic book movies of all time. It really became so ambitious, a movie that it still holds up, and it's definitely rewatchability. And once we get to Deadpool and Wolverine, they made it clear that we're not going to touch Logan because it's a masterpiece. We know that the fans love it, and we're not going to disrespect that character at all. Even though that we know that he's coming back as Wolverine, but that's not going to be our Wolverine that we last saw in Logan. So we're going to see what happens, and I'm excited to see his return again. And I'm glad that he was able to at least do one more movie with Ryan Reynolds. What did you think of Logan? Did you love it or did you not like it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and let me know your take, and let me know what your experience was when you went to go see Logan in theaters. For me, when at the end of the film, I was silenced with my brothers when we were in the car together going home after we done seeing it in theaters, and then we talked about how much we love it. And then when I went to sleep, I cried myself to sleep after thinking about it because it really stuck with my head for a long time, and I bawled my eyes out because of the death of Logan, because I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and to see him go really broke my heart, but it was satisfying at the same time. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe to my channel for more videos to come, and make sure you hit that like button if you like this video. And my goal is to reach 500 subscribers. And if you want to follow my social media links, the link tree will be down in the description below. And I hope you guys have a great day, great evening, wherever you're from. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more.